A theme of today's show is going to be that MAGA is collapsing. And I'm going to explore the most extreme edge of what Trump's movement once was, the more moderate edge, somewhere right in the core of MAGA, and it's all crumbling. And one of the reasons is what we're going to start with, which is that Trump's plot to censor media outlets that he doesn't like is severely backfiring, epically backfiring. And this comes in the form of Stephen Colbert. Once again, and I know some of you will see this as performative. I'm actually admiring the heck out of Stephen Colbert lately. Yes, he already lost his job come, I think it's May. So he only has some months. What month are we in? Whatever. A limited period of time. Yes, months. Until he leaves his job at the late night show on CBS. And so that frees him up to be a little bit more aggressive against his own network being CBS. And that's exactly what he's doing. And last night we saw another example of Trump censorship. Now, before I explain that, MAGA will say that you can't call this Trump censoring Stephen Colbert or his interview with James Talarico because it was actually the CBS lawyers or the CBS executives saying we can't air this interview with James Talarico. But in reality, that is only a byproduct of Trump's actions in pressuring CBS, in punishing CBS, trying to strike fear into their hearts. And then we've seen a bunch of actions, of course, at CBS trying to cozy up to the Trump administration and not be an enemy of the state, instead of choosing the path of bravery and standing up for the First Amendment, which is just pitiful. These ginormous organizations. We are watching independent creators, people like Don Lemon, show more of a backbone than multi-billion-dollar companies that actually have the power and wealth to stand up to the White House. But anyways, what we saw last night was another example of CBS doing something, preemptively censoring because of the pressure of the Trump administration, if not, in this case, a direct statement being the cause. And Stephen Colbert came out on a show. I can't show you the clips, unfortunately, but do stick around. I'll explain the stuff, and then later you can watch the video on YouTube. The show is really intense about copywriting. But Stephen Colbert comes out in the air and says, hey, we had an interview planned with James Talarico. We're still going to publish it online, but we can't broadcast it on television because the CBS lawyers, executives came to me and said, you can't air that, because of the FCC equal time rule. Just the quickest pause to request that you click the subscribe button, the simplest, easiest, freest way, completely free, to support the work that we do. Right below the video, click that subscribe button. Back to the video. The explanation was anxiety over the Byzantine FCC equal time rule, a 1934 statute governing broadcast license holders. Rather than quietly pivot to another guest, Colbert turned the kill into the show. So he made the show a story about how this interview was being killed. And this is my point about how it's backfiring. We have enough brave individuals and enough democratic spirit and pro-Constitution spirit that we're not falling to the authoritarianism. That's the hopeful part. And what's happening is Trump's incompetence is getting in the way just enough, and the power of our institutions and the people is getting in the way just enough where instead of them pushing us off the cliff into authoritarianism, I think what we're going to see is a historic backlash to those actions and advocacy for what's supposed to make this country great. And how that's playing a role here is this interview is getting 10 times more attention now because of the censorship attempt. Colbert's very courageous choice to go, hey, my bosses told me not to talk about this, and I'm going to talk about it more because it's ridiculous. They're trying to cite the equal time rule, which is on broadcast TV. If you give time to one political candidate, you're supposed to give equal time to their opponent. But there's long been a norm and a carve out for news interviews, because every time CNN brings on some congressperson, it's going to be hard to go find exactly the opponent and perfectly get the right time, and you would sort of harm the ability to do substantive interviews if you were always trying to balance that. And then talk shows, because it's more entertainment and there's a news interview element to it. And so shows like Colbert's have long been exempt from that. Plus, if he were to get, he's had Crockett on, so it wouldn't be that opponent. If he tried to get the Republicans, which I'm sure he would love to have on, they would not want to go on Stephen Colbert's show. The crowd would not be friendly to them. Colbert would not be friendly to them. And so the FCC, clearly behind the scenes, because of Trump's rage at anyone who is publicly anti-Trump and his obsession with people like Colbert, you have CBS once again bending the knee to the Trump administration as they're trying to cite this equal time rule, which hasn't been applied to talk shows like Colbert's for a very long time. The ban became the bit, Mediaite continues, fueled by both genuine outrage and sharp showmanship. He understood the rules of modern detention. Nothing travels faster than something framed as forbidden. And this is the next aspect, which I think is further catalyzing the collapse of MAGA, which is one of the things they survived off of is our obsession as a people, not mine necessarily, but our lust for the forbidden. All right, this is what your search history is all about, okay? Oh, I know. It's that lust for the forbidden, and that plays a role in politics a lot, which is MAGA has long been able to, because of it feeling like the powers that be were against Trump for good reason. It felt like these legacy institutions understood, because they did for good reason, that Trump was dangerous. And then whenever they would fact check him, it seemed like the New York Times and the Washington Post and CNN were anti-Trump, even if they were just factually reporting on his dishonesty. But that was able to, for Trump, serve as an agent of construction for this perception that Trump was that suppressed truth, that they don't want you to know about the truth that Trump is speaking. All of the powerful entities are against him. And he's flipping that. He's the powerful entity now. His censorship, I think, is making people who ordinarily would be a little bit conspiratorial, would be a little bit MAGA, go, why is he so adamant about keeping, in this case, a senatorial candidate, Texas, James Talarico, great candidate, off the airwaves? And it's not that Trump necessarily called CBS and said, don't let James Talarico go on the air. But it is the ongoing pressure against CBS from the Trump administration that is making them go, we don't want to give them any reason to further punish us. So we're going to say the equal time rule prevents you from having James Talarico on. But despite that being the demand from the bosses, Colbert said, we're doing the interview. We're publishing it on YouTube. You can watch it after you watch this. After you watch this. And more people I was seeing across platforms, millions and millions and millions of views on this interview. And once again, it fuels this idea of why is Trump leveraging the power of the government against these outlets? And for some within MAGA, hardcore supporters of Trump, that's just going to be, yes, they're getting what they deserve. These outlets have been too dishonest for too long. But as you're going to see later in today's show, a lot of people who previously were all on the Trump train are getting real afraid of just how authoritarian Trump is acting. Talarico's running in a crowded Texas Senate race where name recognition is oxygen. And it goes on to explain that this type of Trump is censoring me moment just became, as the headline reads, the biggest campaign ad of 2026. And we're seeing this backfire again and again for Trump and his administration. The more they try to suppress, to the credit of some of the brave voices in media and activists and just people in general, the more that their message is deteriorated. And the whole engine of MAGA was we're these outsiders. We've been left behind. The government has targeted us. They look down upon us. They silence us. And now it is the person they put into office that's doing just that. He's actually the one using his government power to censor people, to terrify media outlets, to literally arrest journalists. And because of some combination of variables, despite this being very grim, that literally a talk show host is having to publicly speak out against his own network for trying to get him not to interview a certain candidate, I have a feeling of hope seeing how every time this has happened, it's given more relevance to these voices. It's given more support behind the pro-democracy, pro-free speech, liberal movement. And that's hopeful. And I think it shows you that as able as Trump was to exploit the political moment in the United States for his authoritarian ends, I think as a people, we're still anti-authoritarian enough to hate this. We do, obviously, like this audience watching right now, but I'm talking the broader public that makes the difference in elections. And this is just, what are we going to make this about me? Yes. No, but it's just an example close to my heart. One example is throughout the 2024 campaign into the beginning of Trump's presidency, I would go on Piers Morgan's show, and Piers would always be terrified of the truth bombs I was dropping. It was crazy. And he would cut me off way quicker than it felt anyone else on the panel. And often I would get that sort of, shh, no, don't say that, good point, shut up, treatment. And every time I would look in the comments, this is very anecdotal, okay? But every time I would look in the comments, it would be Piers' right-wing audience, to the B-roll, Piers' right-wing audience going, this Luke guy's so annoying. He's so wrong. Wow, that kid doesn't know what he's talking about, right? And that's fine. If I go on a more right-wing platform, I assume that even if I feel I'm expressing myself rationally, they're gonna want to have a reason to think that I'm annoying or not correct, because otherwise they'd have to question their views. So that's not even offensive to me, but it's just notable that on my latest appearance, I'd say, from what I looked at, the majority of the comments were people angry at Piers, and for anyone who name-checked me were like supportive of what I was saying on Piers Morgan's channel, which is not how my previous appearances went. Now, here's the thumbnail. Before I show you some examples, what the hell did they do to my face in the thumbnail? They did some AI filter. My eyes look freaky, but the AI filter took out teeth. Look at my teeth. Look at my teeth. They're there. Look at the missing tooth in the AI thumbnail. Anyways, I'm suing. I'm suing for defamation against my mouth. Don't defame my mouth. But here's some examples. It's so funny, one of the commenters wrote, how Piers was stunned when he got agreement on his trans question. It feels like he wanted to have his never-ending debate on this for 20,000 times again. Maybe recognizing finally someone in his audience, or I don't know if they're on his audience, but it seems like they are, acknowledging how Piers has used, which was my point, these culture war issues to distract from other more substantive issues. Someone else said Piers really wanted Luke to be his lefty straw man, and it didn't work. Someone quoted me saying, I would criticize what she's saying, not the fact that she's saying it. Spot on, Luke. Woo! A few other examples. I usually love what you do, Piers. However, you rather obviously limited Luke's time. Censorship. Even when he said, wait, I won't be back. Is there a way to unsubscribe? I'll be looking into that. And then we'll just read one more if we see one that feels good. Piers don't do so well against educated people. Luke shut him down a couple of times, just like the amazing Lucas did when he was on LOL. He never invited I don't know what that's in reference to. And some of these might be people who were in the audience who went and commented. But my point is, as I was scrolling, there was nowhere near the support for the weaponization of culture war nonsense for the sake of distracting for the more consequential things, like what we're talking about here with the way that Trump's censoring media outlets. That is far more foundationally crucial than whatever Piers wants to talk about that feels more salacious and fits his kind of the woke is always the whole problem argument. And as anecdotal as it is, I got a little bit of hope from even that. Oh, wow. People are recognizing maybe the game that has been played. And I say this with love to Piers, right? I guess. But I do find that extremely notable. And there were more than you would have expected right-wing voices going, what the hell is Trump doing? On a bunch of issues, but one of them being, it's so obvious he's just censoring the peeps he doesn't like. And later we're going to get to how the DHS is going to social media outlets and trying to force them to give private information about social media users who are critical of ICE. And they wanted us to be panicking over the crisis of the First Amendment when the Biden administration would contact Facebook and say, hey, these posts around COVID misinformation look like they violate your terms of service. Would you take them down? And then a massive percentage of the time, Facebook would go, no. And the Biden administration would go, okay. And that was a crisis of the First Amendment. But give me their personal information if they publicly said things critical of ICE is not to too many people. But maybe there's a major shift going on here.